You're listening to Broadening My Horizons on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, please visit parisundergroundradio.com.
Hello, and welcome to Abroadening My Horizons on Paris Underground Radio. My name is Abby Riffel, and I'm a 21-year-old college student from a small town in Kansas who is living in Paris for the summer and will be bringing you along with me as I discover the city. Hi guys, so I have been in Paris for 2 whole weeks now, and it is just so crazy to think about how different my life looks now than it did like only 3 weeks ago. So I thought I would start by talking about some of the differences, like the big differences I'm seeing between my life here in Paris than what it looked like in Kansas or Missouri when I was at school, and what it's been like getting used to those differences or adapting to them, or maybe not adapting to them. The first big difference I'd say is how much walking people do here. So I'm walking all the time and all around whenever I want to go places. And that is something that I wasn't really expecting, and it did take some getting used to. And I'm walking a lot because I'm riding public transport, and you're not immediately dropped off like right in front of the building or wherever you want to go like you are with a car. So you have to ride to the closest stop, and then maybe you have a 10-minute walk after that stop. And so those just all really add up, and you're just walking a lot. I go on walks a lot around my town in Kansas or, on campus at my school. And I thought would be fine with walking a lot. But this walking compared to what I'm doing or what I was doing at home shows I was basically doing nothing. Those little walks in my hometown were nothing compared to what I'm doing here. And this did take some getting used to. My first couple of days here, my feet and legs were pretty tired, and just like my knees were hurting because I'm standing a lot more. But after I got really used to it, I found myself really enjoying how much walking I'm doing. I like walking around the city, and I think it's a good way to get some movement into your day and just to see things that you maybe might not see if you were to take a car or a taxi to get to these places. When I'm walking, I get to look at all the little shops. I get to do some window shopping, and I really enjoy that. And it's kind of funny now thinking about how much we drove in my hometown, because that town is like a mile wide by a mile long. Okay, it's really small. And we still would drive to get to anywhere in that town. We would not walk at all to get places. And it seems really silly to me now thinking about how much we drive in that town compared to how much I'm walking here, because I could easily walk to everywhere in town. And so it's funny that I wasn't doing that. And now that I'm here where I'm walking maybe a lot further than I would be, or to a lot of different places, it's just a funny difference. So I think that's something I want to maybe do more when I get home, is do some more walking and not drive my car as much. I do miss driving my car, but I think I would like to get some more walking into my everyday schedule. But with that being said, with how much walking I am doing, when it's hot outside, I get so hot and sweaty, and I'm sweaty all the time now. Anytime I go out, I just expect to arrive at my destination covered in sweat, and I find it very, very gross. And I honestly don't know how much I've really adjusted to this. I don't know if I'll ever adjust to it. I keep thinking oh yeah, my body's going to get used to being hot all the time. Eventually I'll stop sweating so much. And that has not been the case. I am the sweatiest person all the time, wherever I go. And I hate it. I understand this may be too much information for you guys, but I hate the feeling of being sweaty. And I think it's important to talk about everything on this trip, even the gross and sweaty parts of this trip. And it is kind of funny because Kansas summers, they get pretty hot back home. We can reach into 100-degree temperature fairly easily during the summer. I don't think it's been nearly that hot here, but I don't ever remember sweating as much in Kansas as I do now. And I don't remember feeling as gross in Kansas as I do here. Like I said, this might be too much information, but I'm going to just share it all. But yeah, I am gross and I sweat all the time. And because I'm sweating so much, I find myself showering a lot more. Like here I'm showering at least 2 times a day, which back home I feel like sometimes I would take 2-a-day showers, but it was not like a daily occurrence like it has become here. And actually having to shower so much brings me to my next point that I've had to adjust to, which is the water here. I had been told things about the water before I got here, that it has more minerals in it and that the water is drinkable, but it might not taste that good. And I haven't really had any issues when it comes to drinking the water. I do have a filtered water bottle, so I don't really notice anything of it. But even when I'm not drinking the filtered water, I really have no issues with the way the water here tastes. I'm not really the type of person who can really taste like the differences in waters. Like I know people who will only buy one brand of water because of the way it tastes. And I'm not really like that. I can kind of drink whatever bottle you give me or even out of the tap. It doesn't really bug me unless it is water from my hometown from the tap. I don't know what it is about that water. It's drinkable too, but it tastes so gross to me. And I actually wonder if that's why I'm so okay with the tap water here. Because in my mind, no tap water is more gross than my hometown's tap water. So the Paris tap water tastes fine to me, but I usually use my filtered water bottle anyway. So when it comes to drinking water here, I've had no issues except that I really miss ice water. I have not had like any ice in my drinks since before I left. I was expecting that. I knew ice was kind of more of an American thing than a European thing, but I did not expect how much I would miss it. Like my mouth is watering right now at the thought of drinking an ice cold water. So I think that's definitely going to be something I do when I get back home is drink water and ice cold water. But besides that, again, with the drinking water, no issues. However, I have had issues with how the water is affecting my skin and hair and how it's reacting to it. And I'm not 100% sure if it is the water that's doing this, but I'm pretty confident that it is. But I've had to stop conditioning my hair and moisturizing my face while I've been here because of the water, because something about this water is making my face and my hair like overly moisturized. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not drying out my hair as much as the water back home does. So when I am putting conditioner in my hair or I'm moisturizing my face, I have just found that it is too much and my hair will feel not greasy, but it does feel like overly conditioned. And I don't really like that feeling. It bugs me. And then my face gets, and I'm already, like I said before, I'm already sweating so much. I do not need any unnecessary moisture on my face. So I've kind of just stopped moisturizing my face. I haven't really had any issues with that. And I stopped conditioning and I've doubled down on using shampoo. And that is what I have found to be the best for my hair and my skin. I don't know if like the water is doing this to anyone else because I've asked some of the interns that I'm living with and that are also here with me in Paris. I've asked them, have your hair and skin reacted to the water? And they've had no issues at all. I do wonder if like my hair is more sensitive because when I did move to Missouri for school from Kansas, and it's one state away, it shouldn't be that big of a difference, but Kansas is a lot more dry than Missouri is. And so with the humidity in the air, it was affecting my hair too. And so I remember I had to change the way I took care of my hair in Missouri than how I took care of it in Kansas because of the different climate. But when it does come to climate here, Paris is about the same as Missouri with humidity and the weather and how hot it gets. So I don't really think it's the climate that's affecting it, which makes me think it is the water that's been here and has made me stop conditioning my hair. But I also think that's one of the things I'm going to do when I get home, fully condition my hair, maybe deep condition it, because I'm really not sure how healthy it is for my hair that it is not being conditioned while it's here, but it's just something I can't do because it's driving me nuts when I do it. Yeah, those have been some of my biggest adjustments these past 2 weeks when it comes to like my everyday life. Now I think I want to move on to talk about some of the things I've loved about the city. and some of the things I've done in these past 2 weeks while I've been here and that I've really enjoyed. So the first thing I really, really love about Paris is the history behind it. I think it is so fascinating because in the United States, our history only goes back so far. But here in Paris, it goes back so much longer and there's so much more to it. And it's even cool because at certain points, it's really interwoven with America's history. And I think that is just something that is so fascinating to learn about. And I am a little bit of a history nerd, so I do understand that this may be boring to some people, but if you really do appreciate history, if you really do like learning about it, it is something that is very cool about the city. The history here is so cool because you see traces of that history wherever you go, really. And I do understand there's history everywhere because that's how history works, but I don't think there's very clear traces of history everywhere, especially in the United States. Like, I feel like you really only see that in like Washington, D.C., or if you go to those like original colony states in the New England area. But in Paris, I feel like you'll be walking around and you just see traces of that history everywhere. Like, you may be crossing a bridge, you'll see a giant letter N on the bridge. And it's cool because you know that that bridge was built by Napoleon, right? And he was the guy who wanted to make sure that everyone knew that he was the creator behind this bridge, or he's the reason this bridge was there. So he's going to put his initial, that in there. And it's really cool that you get to see that history as you're crossing the bridge or as you're just walking along the streets, because I think for me, it makes the history seem more real. I don't know if that makes sense, but when I'm sitting in a classroom and just being told these things, I think it's really easy to kind of remove yourself from history and separate it from reality in a sense. But when you're here and you're walking and you're seeing proof of that history everywhere, it's just something that's so cool. And I find myself appreciating it so much more than I thought I would. I never thought I would have cared really about history this much, but it's been one of my favorite things about the city. Also, speaking on the topic of history, one of my favorite places I've been so far was the Palace of Versailles. I spent about 12 hours there the other day because I got there in the morning and then I stayed all the way through the night show with the fireworks. So I feel like I really got my fair share of Versailles that day. But it was just so stunning, You're walking around these grounds and you know that like royalty walked these grounds at some point. And that is really cool to just think about. But also just seeing like the ornamentation of everything that is just so stunning, especially when you know that everything back then had to be done by hand. Like all of the paintings on the ceilings, all of the matching patterns that are on the curtains and then the chairs and the bedspreads, and the details of the sculptures in that garden. You know that so much work went into that because they didn't have like printers or machines or whatever we use these days to make these. They did everything by hand, which I think just gives a new appreciation for that. And to be able to see that, it made me just wonder how long it would have taken to create all of this and put everything together like that. And then it also made me wonder, okay, how much did this cost? Because there's no way that this was anywhere near cheap. And to my surprise, the palace was actually smaller than I imagined it would be. But the gardens were much, much bigger than I thought they would be. And I spent the majority of my day out in the gardens, and I thought that was so much fun. It kind of just has like a park feel to it, but there's some stores and some restaurants, and they had this cool thing where you can rent a rowboat and you can go row onto this pond they have out there. So a couple of interns and I rented this rowboat and we went rowing at the Palace of Versailles. And it was so cool just to say that because back home, nobody does that. Nobody would even say a sentence, oh yeah, I went rowboating at the Palace of Versailles this summer. Like that's just completely different than anything from where I'm from. Yeah, rowing was really, really fun. It was also kind of embarrassing because we had 4 girls in that boat and none of us really knew how to row properly. So we kept crashing into everyone else's rowboats on the water. And I felt really bad because, there's couples out there. I think there was a couple that got engaged and they're trying to enjoy this moment. And then we come crashing in because we don't know how to control our boat. So it was slightly embarrassing, but it was also really funny. Everyone was a good sport about it. They were very kind and understood that it was 20-year-old girls trying to row this boat when everyone else on the water is like a middle-aged man who's controlling this boat. They were nice about it, which made it a funny situation. It was such a good memory and such a good moment. I really liked it.
If you're enjoying this podcast, you might enjoy our sister podcast, Don't Miss This, where host Jennifer Garrity fills you in on the best of what's going on each week in Paris, from art installations to authors' talks to tours and everything in between. You can listen on ParisUndergroundRadio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Abroadening My Horizons will return right after the break. Welcome back to Abroadening My Horizons.
And another hobby I have found that I love doing in the city is going to the movie theaters and watching movies in French. I don't know what it is about it. It's just more fun than going to the movies and watching them in English, especially when I'm here. I can feel like I'm really, getting the whole French experience. And I feel like it might be helping me understand French a little bit more, watching that and trying to piece together what they're saying. But yeah, in the past week, I have watched 2 movies in the theaters. It was a French film. So I don't know the name of it, but it was about an old man who becomes a model. And that one was pretty good. But the second movie that I was really excited about watching was The Little Mermaid, and I saw The Little Mermaid in French. It was so fun watching it, and it was really funny because after the movie, I called my sister, and her favorite princess is The Little Mermaid. And I was like, oh yeah, I've seen the animated movie before, so I knew the story, but I really feel like I was still able to keep up with everything that was being said between them. And, she's kind of impressed with me. And so we keep talking about the movie. And at one point she says, yeah, I liked that Prince Eric was adopted in this adaptation. And that kind of took me by surprise. And I go, wait, Prince Eric was adopted? And she goes, yeah, kind of questioning, me. And I ask, did they say that in the movie? And then she just started laughing at me. So apparently in the movie, there is a whole conversation about Prince Eric being adopted, and I just completely missed that little piece of lore about him because I did not understand the movie and what was being said as well as I thought I did. But I am trying. French movie theaters, they're a lot like American movie theaters, but for my first movie I went and saw, the one about the older man, apparently if you arrive too early to see the movie, they don't let you in the room. And so we were about 30 minutes early, which in my opinion is not too early to go to a movie, but they did not let us in. They told our group, they were like, oh, you need to go wait outside until we're ready to let you in. So they told us that, and we weren't very confident. They told us that in French, and we weren't very confident in our translation, and we didn't ask them for English. So we thought for a second that they had turned us away for some reason. So we were double checking that we got the time right on the ticket, that we got the day right, that we came in on the right entrance. We could not figure it out. And we were like, okay, maybe we are supposed to just wait out here. But we were too embarrassed to go back in and ask because we should have asked him if he could have told us in English before. But we thought we understood, and then we weren't sure if we really understood. So we were just outside, Googling what to know before you go see a French movie or how do movie theaters work in Paris. And eventually we actually did find a blog that told us if you're too early, you may have to wait outside. And so, eventually we built up the courage. The time came close to our movie and we went back in, and sure enough, they did let us through the doors. But it was kind of embarrassing not knowing what to do. That is one thing I've learned here is just how to get over being embarrassed, because it is bound to happen when you are in a new place. And it really is okay because life just keeps going on after that embarrassing moment. And I think every day that I've been here, I've done at least one slightly embarrassing thing, or I've had an embarrassing moment. I actually think I'm going to share a couple of my favorite moments. So I'll start with that. The first one is my favorite embarrassing moment of this whole trip so far. And it actually doesn't really have to do with like being in Paris, because this could happen anywhere, I feel like. But I've been wearing a lot of dresses on this trip because it is summer and it's hot and dresses are an easy outfit to put together. So I'm walking around the city one day. It had not been a windy day at all, okay? And there had been hardly any wind. So I'm not quite sure where this burst of wind came from, but it was a very strong one. And I'm sure you guys can see where I'm going with this. Sure enough, it swept my dress right on up, and I had a full-on Marilyn Monroe moment in the middle of the street. And thankfully, I was wearing biker shorts underneath my dress. So nobody saw anything, but everyone did see my dress fly up and me frantically try to push it down. And just because they saw those shorts doesn't mean I didn't want them to. I mean, I wear them underneath for a reason. That doesn't mean I want them to be seen. So that was pretty embarrassing, but thankfully nobody was laughing. Nobody made like a big deal about it. And another embarrassing moment are when people can tell right away that I am American or that I don't speak French. So for instance, one time I was at my hotel and they have a water fountain there. So I'm there filling up my water bottle, and a guy who works at the hotel comes up beside me and he goes, bonjour. And I say bonjour back. As soon as I said bonjour back to him, he just says to me, you don't speak French. And then he walks away. And I don't know what I did in that one word, in that one small interaction that gave it away, but it is kind of embarrassing because sometimes people come up to me and immediately start talking in English. I don't know what it is that tells them that I don't know French. I don't know. Maybe it's very obvious and I just don't know because I'm not from here. But I would like to know someday what it is that is giving me away. Another embarrassing moment actually just happened today. The metro doors slam shut, okay? They don't open back up if you get hit. And they do have a warning bell, before you get on to tell you when the doors are closing. Because if you get caught in those, good luck, it's not opening. So I'm getting ready to get on the metro and I did not hear the warning bell. And so I walk on and those doors come and they just slammed me in front of everyone in the metro. And it was a pretty crowded time when I got there. So thankfully, I didn't get stuck or anything. I got through, but my shoulders were kind of hurting because it did hit me pretty hard. So it is embarrassing at points just being an American in Paris. But this actually leads to the last thing I wanted to speak about, which is the lessons I'm learning here. The biggest one for me in these first 2 weeks, and I think that I'm still learning right now, is to not be ashamed of who I am. Because when I first arrived in Paris, I was almost embarrassed in a way to be an American because I know that we don't always have the best reputation. So when I arrived, I had it in my head okay, you can't be American. You have to try to be French. And so I would try to fit in with the French people, and I learned very quickly that it is very hard to fit in when you're just not that. And every time I tried to fit in, there would be something that just gave it away that I was an American, and then I'd be embarrassed about that. And so I've been learning that there's nothing wrong with being American. I had no control over where I was born and where I grew up, so I don't think I should feel shame in it. I have found that I can't just keep trying to hide that I'm American because that is who I am. But with that being said, I think there are definitely ways to be respectful in that sense while also not being ashamed of it. So I'm not going to expect everyone to be able to speak English to me because I don't speak French to people, and that's not really fair. I'm not in a country where the number one language is English, so I don't think that I should expect that wherever I go. But I also don't think it is a problem to ask people if they can. I don't think it's something that I should be embarrassed about. Because like I mentioned, I think in my first podcast, there's nothing wrong with asking. The worst that can happen is they say no, and then you have to figure out a way to communicate with them. Yeah, it really is about finding that balance and finding what can work for you. And I think that's all that I really have for this episode today. It's been a crazy, crazy 2 weeks. It's been like a dream, and I can't believe that I'm already halfway done with my time here. It goes by so fast. And yeah, I really have enjoyed every minute of it though.
Thank you for listening to Abroadening My Horizons on Paris Underground Radio. I'm your host, Abby Riffel. If you liked this podcast, please make sure to rate it and give it a review. If you want to get in touch, you can reach me at hello@parisundergroundradio.com or on Instagram at abbyriffel_. Thank you for listening.
This episode was produced by Abby Riffel and Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more on this show and shows like it, please visit parisundergroundradio.com.